we know how we feel. Could we stay longer here in the summer? In the summer. I hope the summer never ends. Oh no. In the summer. I hope the summer never ends. Summer never ends. Oh no. And the days go and the nights go. Watch the waves as they ride into the shoreline. Feel the breeze as it clears your mind. Breathe in this moment and don't close your eyes. Could we stay here in the summer? I hope the summer never ends. Oh no. In the summer. I hope the summer never ends. Summer never ends. Oh no. And the days go and the nights go. Watch the waves as they ride into the shoreline. Feel the breeze as it clears your mind. Breathe in this moment and don't close your eyes. Could we stay longer here in the summer? In the summer. I hope the summer never ends. Oh no. In the summer. I hope the summer never ends. Summer never ends. Oh no. And the days go and the nights go. And the days go and the nights go. I'm running away from the past I left behind. I'm looking for answers, but I'm blinded by the light. I'm lost in the music, can I stay here for the night? I promise I'll be gone in the morning, out of sight and out of mind.
It's Mark, and it's time to start our live show. And so today's show is sponsored by Benny's Armature Kits, which you can find at stopmotionstore.com. And let me get rid of that. And okay. So, where is my webcam? Webcam. There we go. All right. So, welcome. So, Greg, Ron, and Randy, and Janet, welcome to the show. So, if you guys watched last week's show, let me move some stuff over here. The table, it's a bit of a mess. So, last week what we did was we sculpted some of these replacement frontal parts here. So we have front-facing character, a right and a left. And so this week we need to test these out to make sure that they actually work. I'm not really sure how it's going to animate. What I did was I drew out all of the shapes on paper. As you can see here. And so you can kind of see the idea behind this was to have a squash and a stretch. So the stretch would be the narrow piece, and the squash is the more wide piece. So it goes like this, and you can see how I used the paper to get the idea of what I wanted. But you never really know how stuff's going to look until you actually animate it. So we're going to try that. But first, what I realized was that I only have this much of the color I'm using for the apron. So I've got to sculpt some little buttons and aprons for these particular pieces. And so to do that, I need to first make some more clay. And I've got some Sergeant Art Gray clay and some Van Aken White. And these two are actually compatible with each other, so I can mix these together. So yeah, let me get a tool. Before I do that, if you look closely at this clay, you'll see there's a lot of little specks of dirt and dust on there. And so I'm gonna clean that off first. So let me do this so I can see what you guys are talking about. Yeah, so it's been a while, Ron. I know Ron said he's been really super busy with projects for somebody, some kind of like little toys, which is really cool. Making toys. So I'm going to clean this off by scraping it, and you'll see I have a little bit of scrap clay. Let me make sure you guys can see this. Let me see. I have way too many things opened on one computer monitor. So hopefully you guys are having a good week. And Coco, I haven't really seen much about Coco. I have not seen much about it, but I can pretty much trust that Pixar will make a good film. You know, I like Pixar films. Doesn't mean they're always gonna get it right, but for the most part they do. I think their story, centering their films on storylines that are pretty good is why they're successful. I don't think it has so much to do with the technical parts. Because they do good animation and stuff too, and expressive characters, but their story is always the central reason people fall in love with their characters, so. And I think they understand the minds of kids too, like they understand what kids like, and a lot of the a lot of it comes down to your own personal experience. Like a lot of the animators and filmmakers and storytellers and all at Pixar, they had their own, families. And I remember seeing some behind the scenes videos of that where, I think this is definitely enough for what I need here. A lot of them will say that, they fall back on real life. That's always how it is. Some of the best stories are stories that were, they've actually been through with their kids or their wives or whatever. I have some silicone on here. Had some silicone on my tool there. I don't really want that in my clay. This is Sargent Art clay. Now I used to sell this clay on the website, and I've been trying to sell Don Carlson's puppet putty, so I took this off the site. I don't sell it anymore, but I might start selling it again, because we sell out of Don's puppet putty so quick that, we're always in short supply of clay for people, so I might start, contacting my supplier and selling that again. It's good clay. It doesn't get hard over time, like Craft Smart clay. Craft Smart clay in America is a new brand of clay that hobby shops are picking up. I don't know if it's cheaper than Van Aken or what, but my cat's being silly here. Let me get my cat here real quick. Come on, Phelps. Come on. Here. Come on. So anyways, yeah, don't buy Craft Smart clay. If you want clay that doesn't get, hardened and dried out over time. I'm not really sure why that happens to Craft Smart clay. Something happens molecularly to the actual components, and it doesn't last long. I don't quite understand why, though. You'd have to know what the formula is to understand it, and also have to be a chemist to do that, and I don't have either of those abilities. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, the second group of second batch of clay that you ordered, I still have to work out shipping for you on that, because the first box I shipped a flat rate box, so it worked out to be cheaper. So anyways, I'm just mixing this up by hand by just squashing it and folding it over. If you guys are going to make a larger batch of a certain color where you mix two clays together, I don't really recommend this, but this does work. It just takes time. And I'm hoping these were the two colors I mixed together and the two types of clay to get this color. It's going to take more than that, I think, probably. Let's see. That much. I must have added some brown to it also. Get some brown. Oh, that's great, Ron. Well, I'm glad to send somebody your way to get that done. He was asking me to make those armature kits, and I have so much work to do right now. I'm so busy. I've got, let's see. Well, I've got a second half of a case mold to make, and I've got a head to attach to a body and make a mold of that. And after that, I have 5 heads to make for somebody. Full scale. All the Batman characters from the 1960s TV show. So the Joker and Batgirl, Robin. So I have a lot of work ahead of me, and it's just been... Plus I've been getting a lot of orders from my webpage, so it's like non-stop work for me. Which I guess is good. I can't really complain. But still, I really didn't want to do that job. I was like, I can do it, but do I have the time? No, I don't. Seems like a nice guy. The guy that ordered those 3 kits is a photographer, a wedding photographer. I went to his website. He seems like a cool guy and really talented in terms of the photography, the pictures he took. Oh, you never got it, Randy? So, Puppet Putty is really good. I mean, there's Donna's experimenting with some new stuff, like I mentioned in the last show, where he's got like an ultra soft version, and he's got the so he's got like a matte version, matte Puppet Putty, so it's not so shiny. It's really soft and it's easy to work with. And then he's got these sort of like day glow colors, and these will glow in the dark. Well, not glow in the dark, but you need a black light for these. So if you've got I've got like a purple laser. So if you shine on anything else, it's not bright, but then you shine it on the clay, and it just gets really super bright. So there's a lot of tricks you can do, like you can make laser beams with it and fire and thanks, Randy. Yeah, the guy that painted and I am engineering or Imagineer says so Puppet Putty is tough to get started, but the colors don't bleed on your fingers, which is true. And yeah, Janet, Janet, if I were you, I wouldn't buy Puppet Putty right now if you're even thinking of it, because I would wait till Don comes out with the ultra soft version. I think you'd like that best, from what you were telling me. I think you would like the softer version, or at least Puppet Putty soft. It's easier to work with your hands, and that's something that you might think about. I Am Toys is the softer version, but I don't think we have any currently. I think the last we had, you bought it all. So you might want to try it if you haven't. It works pretty good. So Randy, the guy that painted that head is Dash and Dazzle. His name is David. Really talented guy, and evidently he's really well known. Before I got into sculpting like portraits and stuff, I never heard of the guy, and so one of my clients would tell me about him, and he's like, "Have you ever heard of Dash and Dazzle? He's really famous." I'm like, "No," because I never actually anticipated getting involved in anything to do with mannequins and stuff. Mannequins were the last thing I ever expected to have to sculpt on, but I got a lot of requests from people wanting my sculpting service, and so I found out about him, but I heard that his prices were really expensive, and Gary in New York, who I worked for, had told me about him and said, he's one of the best, and he showed me some pictures and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's really impressive. Like, he would take these old mannequins from the 1930s, and they'd be really beat up and scratched and just uglier than you can imagine, like the paint jobs on them. And so he'd like strip off the paint, sand it and repaint it, and it's, he's super skilled. All right, so notice my clay this Van Eyck clay is not so great. It's like it's somewhat crumbly for some reason. So let's see, it's a little bit darker and a little bit browner. So these two pieces should probably do it. Oh, that's cool, Ron. Yeah, I think I guess I gave you his phone number, didn't I? That's awesome. And Janet says, Mark, you remember Book of Life? I'm angry because both movie are about De los Muertos, but only Coco have Polish dubbing and will be in cinema. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, you know. Hollywood does not really make films specifically geared towards every single country. You know, that's the thing about them. They might be big, but they can't really make everybody happy. I mean, it's impossible. Impossible. So if you guys are mixing colors this way, it does take a long time. I know Don Carlson told me that when clay gets crumbly like this, it's because of the oils and the wax. If the chains become shortened, becomes weaker. If you use long chain oils and waxes, molecular chains, then it's more sturdy somehow. This specific problem that you see here is the reason why Don Carlson made the dark white puppet putty. If you mix dark white puppet putty in something like this, it does not become crumbly. So I've got some mineral oil. I'm going to put some in here and see what happens, just to see if I can get this to be a better consistency. So it won't take a lot. Maybe about like that. And it's going to be messy, but we'll see if it helps the consistency. So the idea is that the molecular chains in the oil might be a bit long or longer than what is currently going on with this, which is that for some reason the molecular bonds break, I guess. This is a time when Don Carlson would be a perfect guest for the show because he could explain it all in exquisite detail. But it does seem to be helping here, so yep, check that out. Definitely helping. And he actually said that there's a certain type of mineral oil that works best. But this is definitely working here. And this kind of mineral oil is, you know, I'm not really sure. But there's supposedly different types. It might be like food grade, maybe? Was it food grade or medical grade? I can't remember. But I am going to add just another, maybe a few more drops on here first. As well as darkening it slightly again, because it's nearly the same color, but just a slight bit more with this gray. Yep, this is what's involved in clay puppets. This is part of it. And I don't think I've ever showed you guys how to soften clay before with mineral oils, so maybe this is, you know, might be boring, but at least you might learn something. So Janet says the worst Book of Life was removed from Polish cinemas a few days before premiere and have ready Polish dubbing. Huh. Okay. Yeah, it's... Yeah, maybe, you know, I think with a lot of that stuff, they dub films later on. Like, usually it comes out in theaters and then, uh, you know, they'll dub it and then it will be in different locations after that. It takes time to do that kind of stuff. But, so Randy says, I haven't even touched clay since I finished my 4 Aussie ads last March. Been animating paper for 6 months and loving it. No mess. Awesome. So why are you animating paper then, Randy? Is that like some kind of... I know the guys at Dragon Frame, they're always animating paper. It's like their thing. It's like they draw characters and then, you know, trace the outlines and with the razor blade and then figure out how to joint them. Alright, so this is almost mixed up well here. So this is still crumbly here, obviously, but it's soft, and as long as I don't bend it too much, it'll be fine. And since our characters are flat, you know, there's no problem. But if I were trying to use this to animate a face on a normal character, you know, where this was my main clay, it probably wouldn't work out too well. I would want to mix in some of that puppet putty for sure, if I had some. Alright, so the color is pretty close now, you'll notice. It's, you know, it's not 100%, but I'm not worried. I think as long as I get it within, you know, at least 85% of where it needs to be, we should be good. If I were really picky, I would add a little bit more gray to this, just to make it slightly a pinch darker. But we're going to leave it this way. Hey, Hoserloo. Okay. So, I'm going to kind of get my fingers cleaned off here because you'll notice I have a lot of clay on my thumb and whatnot. And I'm going to use some alcohol for that. Rubbing alcohol. It's going to wash my hands. Or rub my hands. Put some in this paper towel. This. And get it off my fingers. The reason why is because I'm going to be grabbing this purple clay. I don't want to get the clays to mix on each other. Not on purpose, just too lazy. Type the full name, which would have been shorter than explain this. So Randy says, I'm doing a short film that would take 2 or 3 lifetimes to shoot in clay, so I thought I'd try something simpler, thus animating paper. Actually, the shadows of paper. Awesome. You know, I think that virtual reality, that's going to change animation for, you know, for a lot of people, how they animate. I think they call it animation, but really it's like puppetry. That program Mind Show is really, it's really cool. That's another topic, I guess, different than stop motion. All right, so my fingers are pretty much back to normal. So what I need to do is, first I'm going to put this back. So let me move some stuff around. So you can see. So I've got the aprons, which if we're going to do this properly, where's my sculpting tool? Oh, let me get my sculpting tool. So, I need to make a somewhat longer apron here, a stretched and a squashed apron for this one and this one. So maybe I should do that off to the side on this paper actually. Make it a little bit simpler. I'm trying to do it there. So we have our neutral position, and then we've got these two. So the thinking behind this is, so we need to reproduce this, the part that goes across. So that'd be like the string here. And then the apron itself. And then we also have to put these buttons on there, and they all have to make sense when we animate them. And it's that making sense that's going to be the hard part. It has to move properly, and if it doesn't move properly, it's going to look like garbage. So maybe what I could do is test out the lines I scribed on here first to make sure the lines work. So let me this is going to be fun trying to do this here. Let's see if I can move all my stuff on my screen around, and then once I do that, turn off my webcam, and then turn on the screen. Okay, let's see. There we go. Alright, that should work. So I apologize for the messy screen, but that's the way it is for now. I'm going to put this in the shot where it belongs, somewhere here. Like this. Okay. So I'm going to, let me take, how many frames? 15 frames per second playback. Alright, so that's one frame, and then onion skinning. Let's take 2 each to see what that does. So I'm going to animate it going down first. So we'll have a squash. Slight squash anyway. Okay, let's see what this looks like. I'm going to take the onion skin off and flip back and forth. So, what I'm thinking is, let me put the string across there first. Just to see what this might look like. So I'm thinking I want that string to be lower, so I'm going to scribe a line just a tad bit lower across the whole thing. And to do that, I'm going to use my dental tool here. So I'm going to go across like that. Just to kind of see what this will look like. So, let's see here. Okay. So that's onion skinning. If you guys don't know what I'm doing, onion skinning is just a way to line up stuff. Makes the current frame somewhat transparent. And, okay, so if I do it that way, let me take a picture. Yeah, this will definitely work. I can tell already. So let's just do that and put this back in real quick. Like this, and then put it over. And then I'll take 2 pictures of this. And the stretch. So, let's see. So the stretched version, I think I've got this, let's see, yep. So I don't like the curvature here. This has got to be higher on this side. Or does it? Yeah, let me see. Seems already high enough, but I guess not. I'm not really sure if I want it to go like... I'm trying to imagine what that line in the center is going to look like. So the first squash is about there. About here. So there, there. Yeah, this might actually work pretty good. Well, let's take a couple of pictures and then see what it looks like, and I can make changes afterwards. Alright, let's see what happens here. .24 frames per second here. Okay. So I think on this stretch I might make the line more straight. So that way the center will kind of pop up, and when it's up like that, it'll kind of give it like a snappiness to the motion. So, all right. So let me switch back to my other web camera. Okay. Yeah, the Neil Gaiman is really... That project seems really cool, but I haven't seen much about that lately. Seems like that was from about a year or two ago, almost. Alright, so I like the way the lines are on here. I think they're good enough. I could be super picky about all this and make it super accurate if I wanted to. But this is the only one that I need to really adjust the line on, where I made it lower just to. The other one that I adjusted doesn't matter because I'm going to cover that with a piece of white clay. This one just has to be altered a little bit so that that line is lowered. Okay. Looks pretty good. So again, if you guys don't remember last time what I said about this, I'm going to be using this for potentially for walk cycles from the front, where the camera changes from like a left position to a right position while she's walking, and then stops, makes a sudden stop. And just for reactions and things of that nature. So I don't want to have just a static character just sort of, you know, standing there all the time. I want to have the ability to accent what's going on in the action. So I'm using a pasta roller out to the side here. Hopefully it's not too noisy when I do this. That just flattens out the clay. So I've got one side where you can see I rolled out some purple clay in the past. And so there's some, you know, but this side is clean, so I'm going to use this side. And from here, I'll take my knife. Let's see, so that's about how wide? About this wide. Maybe a little bit less. Let's make a new one. So I haven't really been watching a lot of films and animations lately, but if you guys want to look up something neat, look up Pombo Loves You on Vimeo. It's I don't know when it was released. I guess 3 weeks ago. It's from Steve Warren, W-A-R-N-E. Pombo Loves You. You guys would probably like that. It's really well made of a stop motion. I think they must have had a pretty good budget. The lighting and everything is great. There's they use a lot of black lights, so that everything kind of glows. In certain shots. It's really nice. I mean, you would be surprised how many amazing stop motion animators are out there that you never really hear about. You know, that just people are really dedicating a lot of time towards making something look nice and animating things well. Okay, so we got our little apron strings here, and I think the clay is a bit thick, so I'm just going to kind of stretch it out and flatten it a little bit before I stick it onto our bodies here. Oh, it cracked. Oh, that's okay. We'll probably still use it, I think. Yep. So after I stick the clay on all these, we'll test the animation again. Once it's on there, I want to make sure it's, I'm I'm afraid to stick it down permanently to like press it on there, but I think we'll just do that for now. Make it a little bit neat, and then if we need to adjust it later, we still could. Let's see, this one or that one? I think I'll use the thinner clay on this one because it's squashed and everything's sort of stretched to the sides. So I'm gonna use some thinner clay for the ribbon. Actually, I guess you can't see the ribbon from this side, only from the side shots. What am I saying? Yeah, maybe I don't know if I should add a little ribbon on the side there, like a little bow and a knot. Anyways, let's see. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to cut it, try and make the contour look pleasing if possible. This. Again, I'm not really pressing it on the clay at this point, so I can adjust it. And this one here will be the last one to make the string across. So this one I lowered the line because I noticed that it was too high when I was testing it in the animation. So I'm just going to kind of go across, make sure that it's smoothed out where I can't see the original line, and then put this across, like this. Make it somewhat neat. Oh, have you guys seen the Kickstarter for Mark Evans? His documentary film was about $10,000 short on funds as of yesterday. The Will Vinton Project documentary, and he said that somebody offered to pay $3,000 per every dollar donated from now until tomorrow. Because tomorrow, I think at like tomorrow night, probably, I don't know if it's around this time tomorrow, that whole Kickstarter campaign is over. And so there's a little bit of time left. It's called Welcome to My Daydream, if you guys want to look that up. So Welcome to My Daydream, and it's got interviews with 50 people that animated at Will Vinton Studios in between the 80s and 90s, and maybe even in the 2000s. So it's one of the projects that I backed it myself. I actually donated some money to it because I think that if this documentary is released, it might help spark a claymation style comeback, if it's successful. I actually kind of believe that, because it seems really exciting in terms of they're going to be re-releasing videos that were shot that had never been seen before, behind the scenes stuff. And back then in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, there was not as much behind the scenes film footage from Will Vinton Studios. And I got to go there myself in person and see the studio, and man, it was like the most surreal experience I've probably ever had, just seeing these characters that looked like they were alive, sculpted in clay before they were animated. Just the designs and the energy that went into making them, and the skill, and they were breaking a lot of new ground with clay. It was sort of, it wasn't really a new thing, but it was more like, how do we make it work as an animation medium? And Will Vinton really pulled it off, and he did an amazing job compared to others that have failed before him. And there were a lot of smaller studios that just they tried to emulate similar styles and stuff. And like I worked for John Lemon Films, and nobody had ever really heard of John Lemon Films, even though their projects were cool. There were a lot of fun projects they did, but they tried to emulate Will Vinton to some degree, with clay animation. And I was a part of that, and so it's partly my fault and the fault of others that we never achieved the same kind of success, I guess, in a way. I mean, maybe it's part luck, fate, luck, and whatever else. But Will Vinton was always the place that everybody aspired to emulate for his achievements. Let's see here. So where's my measurements? But anyways, yeah. So John says it's a little less than 6,000 left to go. Awesome. Well, if anybody donates today, like I say, if there's less than 6,000, I think if somebody donates just, if there were a few hundred more dollars donated, then he would definitely make his goal. So, Assassin's Creed game. Nope, I haven't played that. I've seen videos and stuff of it. I never played it. So I'm making my stretched apron longer than the others here. Making a measurement because it's stretched. Has to be long. Also has to be stretched in the other direction. I think I want this particular apron to have some lines scribed on it that go up and down as well to accent the stretched aspect to it. Let's see, so in the center. I don't want this to look too perfectly straight, but it's got to be. Yep, Van Eyck clay is not what it used to be, unfortunately. It's like this clay is kind of crumbly still, even after the oil. Alright, so just to kind of show you guys what that looks like. There's the apron. I haven't added the buttons yet. How much time we have? We have about 10 minutes. I'll try to do these here. I'll put the aprons on and maybe quickly put the buttons on, and we'll see how it looks. But let's get these. Now, for the squashed versions, I need to make the apron wider. So I'm going to make a measurement. Expand my calipers just a bit here. Not too much though, because we have to expand it twice for 2 squashes. So this one just a little bit. Oops. So to here. And the one after it needs to be even wider. So we'll do it like this. And it needs to be shorter as well. So I've got to cut down on the height. Let's say to about here. So when I stick it on there, it'll be there, and this will be here. And if all goes well, this will look proper. get this on there. So yeah, are you playing that game, Janet? Is that fun? I do like games, but I don't really play them as much as I used to. At least, if I'm busy like I am now, I don't. But if there's nothing going on, I'll play Star Wars Battlefront. I've been playing that a bit. But it's not really fun to play. It's kind of like one of those games where nowadays with games, what you do is if you pay the company, you can buy like special weapons and things, and then you can have an advantage over other players. It's like a pay to win sort of situation, which I think is kind of silly. I don't really like that too much, because now games don't require as much skill, and if you play online, there's so many cheaters, there's so many hackers. Like if you look up, if you go on YouTube and you type in Star Wars Battlefront hacker, there's like hundreds of videos of hackers. And what people do is you can go to a website that just caters to people that want to hack the game. So what they'll do is they'll pay like $5 and get a script and instructions on how to hack the game, and then they have these cheats where you can see through the walls. There's cheats where your gun has 10 times the power, so you kill people with one bullet. And there's aim bots. There's all kinds of stuff, and certain game companies are good at getting that fixed. Where they can on the servers they can add these little like antivirus kind of things where it compares your game to their client. So they have like a copy of the client, and it compares the two, and if there's any difference, you cannot play. It will kick you off. But like Electronic Arts, for some reason, they don't seem to care about that. They just let people slide, and so every single game you go on, there's somebody hacking. And even if there wasn't hacking, it still isn't fun, because people buy the expansion packs for it, which have better weapons, and then you're stuck with the crappier weapons. So there's no winning. And it's not really like being a sore loser or anything. It's just the advantage of some players on these games is where you just join the game and you're just dying nonstop. You're not actually fighting somebody. You're just like what do they call it? Gonna have a George Bush moment, but it's like shooting apples in a barrel. Is that the expression? Okay, so anyways, yeah. In other words, you cannot defend yourself. Oh, okay. So you're watching on what is it, Twitch TV or something like that? You're watching the games? Yep. It's fun. It's fun to watch them play. My son does that. He's really into watching people play on YouTube and stuff. Alright, so I'm kind of haphazardly adding these buttons. I'm kind of looking at the original and kind of thinking, where should the button go? And it looks like it goes about there. But I'm going to readjust all that stuff when we test it out. So it doesn't have to be perfect right now. For the stretched version, I want to kind of space these out a little bit more than the others. So I want it between the apron string and the neck. I'm gonna have a little bit more distance. So everything's stretched. And probably the squashed one, I should bring the buttons in closer, shouldn't I? Because when I do that, I'll probably bring the head down lower as well. That's part of the animation. So lower. And this one maybe just a little bit lower than this one. Let's see how that looks. That's probably pretty good. All right. So let's test it. We'll test it, and that will be the rest of our show. Let me see, where's my screen 2, and get rid of that. Okay. Let's put this down and bring this back. All right, so I'm going to delete all my frames. Okay, it's all deleted. All right, so I'm going to put in my first one. First body replacement. Center. Take a couple of pictures. And hopefully this will look nice, but let's line it up. So we got our first squash, which I'll put in about here. So already I can see that the apron needs to be moved over. So I'm going to move the apron a bit. And where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it towards the left here like this. Let's see how that is. Oop. Too far. See how that one is. Okay, and also, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and emulate the curve of the bottom part as well, just a bit. So, somewhere around here, slice this. I think Ron Cole said he was doing something like this with Dragon Frame when he was trying to put stickers on some of the toys he was making. Or decals or something like that. So I'm gonna, off to the side, I'm gonna cut this a little bit nice and neat. It's kind of hard to do it there. Okay, and then smooth it a bit. So for the next squash that I do, I'm just kind of smoothing this out. But for the next one, I'm going to have to also alter the shape a bit. Alright, so let me put this back in here. And over. So I think right here I'm going to also kind of angle this part just a bit. Alright, so this should look pretty good now. I think I'm probably pretty close to where it needs to be. Let's see, a little bit more. Alright. Let's see here. And the buttons, this one needs to be over a bit. Just a little bit. And this one, Oops. Okay, so I'm going to take 2 frames. That should be good. Carefully remove it. And slide in the further squashed replacement and see how this looks. Oop. Stuck to my tool. So I'm gonna turn off onion skinning. Sometimes you can see how it looks when it's flipped back and forth better than you can when it's so this isn't too bad actually the way it is. I kind of like the way the corner stays in one area like that and widens, kind of stretches it out. I think that's the way it would kind of behave if it were stretched. So I'm going to take 2 frames. I think this is going to be good. So the only thing I have a concern about now is the stretch, which we'll get to after I take a couple of frames of each of these. So I'll put this back in here. Somewhere, let's see, about there maybe. And I could, if I'm animating this, I can sort of skip putting in the neutral position, and this would make it appear as though it's kind of snapping more. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because if I do that, I can't see where the buttons are going to go. So let me do it this way. But so anyway, in the end piece, I might not. In the end, I might not animate it this way. I'll probably skip doing this one. But for the sake of getting the buttons in the right spot, I'm going to do this. So when I put the stretch in, put it like this, and yeah, see, I don't want to have the buttons line up exactly the same like that. Turn off onion skin. Yeah, see how that button right there, it's lined up exactly the same? That's not going to work. That would be a lot better. And I also think that I'll probably add a few lines just here on the sides of this purple clay. Again, just to sort of accent that this is stretched out. Is there anything else? Let's see. I want to make this really look aesthetically pleasing, but I'm going to take this off to the side for a minute. So you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm putting some deeper lines in here. I hope it'll look nice. Something like that. Well, I guess it's not too bad. So I'm going to take a couple of pictures of that, and then we'll go back to our neutral position and we'll watch the animation, see how it looks. Alright, so let's play it. Now loop it. It's not too bad, I guess. So that will be our squash and stretch body. Now, of course, there's no head, there's no arms on here, but once that's all on there, it should look pretty cool. At least hopefully it will. Let's see what you guys are saying. I can't really see. Ah, okay. So anyways, that does conclude our show for tonight. Sorry I could not see what you guys were saying at the last part to respond to you, but hopefully you guys learned a little bit of how this is done, and I guess I will see you all next week. See you later.